Okay, friends, it's time to begin. Okay, I'd like to welcome you to this event. I'm Mary Heath. I'm the MC of tonight's event, possibly the least important person on the speaking list though. I'd like to begin by introducing Bonny Brodie. Bonny is a Ghana woman from Largs Bay. Bonny is the granddaughter of Rhanee Brodie, a well-known and staunch leader and activist who I was lucky enough to work with on the campaign to stop the bridge to Coomerack. Her family have had long-term involvement in the anti-nuclear movement, so Bonny's part of a staunch tradition and carrying that forward into the present and the future in her own beautiful way. Please make her welcome.
Namani, Nai Nari Bonny Brodie, Nai Wakandi, Namani na Budni, Nai Bakawanku Ganamiana. Hello everyone, my name is Bonny Brodie and I'd like to welcome you all on Ghana land today. I'd like to pay our respects to our elders past, present and emerging, and to all of you here today. So speaking of Coomerack, I first watched the DVD about it last night. Which was good. So I reconnected back with my grandmother, hearing her voice and her fight for her stuff back when I was young as my son who's here today. And it kind of brought me back together of why I do this and why I stay connected to my grandmother. And yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much, Bonny. So, I think I've been asked to say a little bit about the event, but I think actually we all know why we're here. Some of us know the history of nuclear weapons testing in this state that turned parts of it into a nuclear waste dump that devastated the lives and the country of Auntie June's people, and Auntie June will be speaking about that later. We know that every First Nation that has been asked to host a nuclear waste dump in this country has said no. And now, folks don't want nuclear power on their country in Port Augusta. So I think we're all here to say no nukes in Port Augusta, no nukes in this beautiful continent. And we have a rich, knowledgeable, amazing panel that we're privileged to get to listen to tonight to educate and inform us. But surprise, I know you only just sat down, but now is a great opportunity to get all of you in a photo, and we're not going to pass up that opportunity. We're going to go hard and do it now rather than lose a few people who need to leave early and do it at the end. Are you up for it? Yeah. So we'd like you to kind of step up towards the front, please. I think you're going to stay facing the direction that you are, but if we can snuggle up and have the banner in front of us all. Hey, Elders and First Nations folks to the front for sure.
Can everyone on the left please just shuffle in? Thank you. Sorry guys, can you guys move in even more? Just bunch in as much as you can.
How about the giant? Move back. No, I'm not. No. But if you can't,
you guys on the left, are you all right to go around the back or come in the middle for me? Just want to make sure to get you guys in. Thank you. No, it's just everyone. It's just getting people in the back.
excuse me, tell them this line out loud If you can't see the camera can't see you.
Very true. All right. That's pretty good. All right. I think we're pretty good. Yeah.
Got it?
All right.
Good job.
All right, hold on. Haven't taken a photo yet. All right, everyone say, what do you want to say?
No news. No news.
All right, don't move yet. All right, no way. All right, I reckon we got it. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, friends. Thank you for your cooperation. You never know when that photo's going to come in handy, right? Okay, folks.
What now?
So, next I'm going to introduce Clinton Daly, known as Stano. Clinton is an Arabana man. He's grown up and lives in Port Augusta. He has coordinated speakers and reps from Port Augusta to give a unique perspective.
The mic's gone off.
Yes, I could tell. Is it back on?
Just speak up.
Stano has coordinated speakers and reps from Port Augusta to give a unique perspective on how the proposed nuclear power plant will impact on their lives. Stano is the coordinator of the Don't Nuke Port Augusta community group. Please make him welcome.
Well, normally I would say good morning, but it's good evening. I've not done an evening session such as this, but thank you very much. Just like to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we meet on today, the Kaurna people, to their elders past and present, and for those young and emerging, we pay our respects. Thank you. Thank you, Mary, but my name is Clinton, and a lot of people in my hometown call me Stano. So if you hear a number of people referring to Stano tonight, that is I. I don't mind Clinton, and I absolutely love Stano. When I'm called Clinton, and it's usually by my mother or my grandparents, I'm usually in trouble. So please refrain from Clinton, because we're all nothing but happy vibes tonight in regards to individual self and expression, but we've certainly got some serious business that we need to have conversations about, in particular with the looming election come this Saturday. Just a quick around the room, hands up for those that have already pre-voted, myself, and those that will be voting on Saturday. Wonderful. That means you have to get out of bed extra early because those lineups are going to be huge, but the democracy sausage will be available to you as well. So that's one thing I didn't get when I voted early. So much is happening around this topic of nuclear. It's been quite interesting actually for myself. I'm a new kid on the block when it comes to this topic and getting out into the community and encouraging that conversation. So bear with me. I'm being taught by the best. Just like to acknowledge CANA, the Climate Action Network Australia. They have been instrumental in getting me on board to work with my community, which has been exciting. So relatively new to the scene. With CANA's support, it's been absolutely wonderful. The Australian Conservation Foundation has also been supportive, and you might see there's the no to nuclear signs that are around the building tonight. If you don't have one and you'd like to take one, please help yourselves. There's a few here and we've got some more out in the van, so just if there's a shortage of, please let me know and we'll grab you one as well. There are also some smaller Port Augusta No Way SA signs, so there's a few of those around as well, so grab your hands on them because they're going like hotcakes. I've just collected another order this morning, so yeah, please feel free to take one if you don't have one to display at home or at the rally tomorrow, which I'm sure there's going to be more conversation around that rally detail. So. But it's been wonderful as the coordinator or the liaison officer for Port Augusta. Back on Saturday the 29th of March, we hosted an event in Port Augusta that was well attended by community, and we had a number of brilliant speakers, and the conversation and the information was just astounding in a sense that there was a lot of emotion, there was a lot of opinion around this nuclear waste, the nuclear reactor and what it actually means for our community of Port Augusta. We live in the most beautiful part of South Australia. We are at the crossroads of South Australia, so northeast, southwest, no matter which way you want to go, you will have to pass over our Gulf of St Vincent. The Spencer Gulf, which leads right up to the absolutely stunning Flinders Ranges. So when we talk about industry and employment and those kind of issues that we're currently facing in Port Augusta, I'm not sure if many of you have been to Port Augusta. The population consists of around about 13,500 people. It's a beautiful city. I've lived there all my life. I've been schooled, I've been educated, and I've worked tirelessly in the community. Right now I've taken a bit of a break from 9 to 5, Monday to Friday employment, and keeping myself busy, active in the community, and one of those that love to get out and talk to people like yourselves in this sort of setting. Port Augusta is very unique again with the Flinders Ranges and the Spencer Gulf. But back in 2017, some people may remember that the Port Augusta power station, which was the coal-fuelled power station, was demolished. And have things improved? Well, yes, actually they have improved, because I myself personally have experienced, when we had the power station, a number of blackouts. And ever since the power station was demolished in 2017, we haven't had many blackouts at all. So what could that mean? We did, however, have a blackout on Easter Friday, which was not good. But we made do with what we had in order. I'm not a traditionalist, and by no means my family's Christian, but we do the whole, in respect of my grandparents, the whole sit-down white meats, that kind of lovely food. So yeah, for us, we had to make it work, and I'm a bit of a stickler for a cup of tea in the morning. So yeah, out come the pot and the pot of water and stuck it on the barbecue, and I had my cup of tea, so I was happy about that. But the power issue in Port Augusta, we're becoming, it's sensational to see the renewables happening around our space in Port Augusta. The backdrop, and I think it's a bit of a talking point. I know when the power station was in Port Augusta, we used to drive over a hill coming from Adelaide, and we seen the stack of the power station. We knew that we were closer to home. Now this time around, we can actually see the big wind turbines, and then we've got the Tomato solar farm as well, and there's a big tower that glows red at night, and just for aircraft, obviously. But that's our indication that we're actually getting closer to home, and so that's been amazing. But this topic of a nuclear reactor for Port Augusta is just not on. In my community, and there's testament around the room for those that have been to Port Augusta and locals in Port Augusta, is my stance on nuclear reactor versus Port Augusta and the opinions of not wanting it is because in Port Augusta we have a very diverse community. At any given time during summer, we could have up to 42 different language groups that represent our far north region of South Australia and beyond visit Port Augusta during our summer periods. That's 42 on average. That's a whole lot of people. But with that whole lot of people as well, it brings some issues. So we look at the housing, we look at the antisocial behaviour in communities, because these people, these itinerant mob, who we call mob, from those communities converge on Port Augusta because it's way too hot in the outback, and the access to medical and a raft of other things that happen, doesn't happen in those communities. So they converge on Port Augusta. And so with that, my stance in regards to objecting to a nuclear power plant in Port Augusta is that we do have bigger fish to fry in Port Augusta before we can even contemplate the introduction of the reactor. Education, employment, activities for young people, activities for people my age, activities for our seniors, they're very lacklustre in our community. But in a nutshell, if in the event this proposal goes ahead and the costs around or associated with this nuclear reactor, and there's been numbers thrown around. I think it was only yesterday morning I seen it was, the blowout of the costs around $4.2 trillion from $600 billion. That's a massive leap for 7 nuclear reactors across this country. Why doesn't government really consider those communities on which they've identified? And I'll make mention about, I've been watching the debate closely, and I suspect a few of you have as well. A lot of you have, if not everybody has. But it just astounds me. As an Aboriginal person living in Port Augusta, back last year, you might remember the Voice referendum. And the slogan back then from the opposition was, if you don't know, vote no. Yeah. All right, how much information do we have in regards to these nuclear reactors in our backyards? None. Peter Dutton hasn't even talked about it. Peter Dutton has been questioned about it, in particular visiting those sites, and he refuses to. How can those people like Peter Dutton sit in Canberra and make decisions in the best interest of our community and for the nation when it comes to a solid supply of electricity? Nuclear is not the way to go. We've got a cost of living crisis now, not in 2035 or 2050. So his argument is this is what we're going to do. We've seen it on paper. People have talked about it. We're here tonight talking about it. We need to fix the problems that are currently existing in our communities, and governments need to get on board and support us, not throw us dirty little tactics and proposals such as building nuclear reactors. We don't want it. We say no. Port Augusta, no way, SA. That's enough from me for the moment. If you want to chat a little bit later on about the other stuff that I do in Port Augusta, more than happy to have a conversation with you, but I'll hand it back to Mary, who will introduce my amazing representatives from Port Augusta. So please put your hands together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so next I'm going to introduce Auntie June Lennon, who has travelled down from Port Augusta with her sister Jennifer and niece Leanne. These women from northern South Australia know firsthand the harmful impacts of nuclear as atomic bomb test survivors. So we're just going to set up so it's comfortable.
Do you want to just a couple of chairs and just the microphone?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Yes, please. Honey, June, do you want to stand up or sit down?
No, I can stand up.
Stand up.
Yeah. I've been sitting down all day. Great. Thank you so much.
Seat driver.
Yeah. I was actually in the front though.
No, very good.
Hello everybody, my name is June Lennon. That's my oldest sister Jennifer sitting back there with my niece Leanne, as Mary said. I invited my brother to come here tonight, and he said he would if he could, but obviously he hasn't made it. We are first generation survivors of the bomb that was detonated at Emu Field. Jenny was 16. Jenny was 6 years old. Bruce was 4 years old, and I was 4 months old. Mum, Dad, Bruce stood outside and watched the mushroom that happened on that day. They heard the rumbling sound and the trembling of the earth, and then the black mist was what they witnessed next. I have this horrible thing of saying all the time, which I'm trying to get out of. So just forgive me for a minute. I've got a photo here of my family 15 years after we witnessed the bomb at Emu Field. That was us in Lee Creek, which was where we shifted after we left Emu Field. We went back to Kubapedi because we were all suffering signs of sickness like vomiting, diarrhea. Mum and Bruce and Dad had the rash on their bodies. And Jenny and I were suffering with seizures. We've had seizures from that day to this, and that runs through our family tree, if you like. We also have, that's Mum there when she was young. Michelle probably remembers her when she had the black hair. I'll find a more recent one. This is her today, basically. This is my mum at 94 years of age. So she's still going well. She's in Mount Carmel residential care, living down here. She misses us. We miss her. We feel that she should be living with us. You know, our way is to look after our parents if we can when they get older. We would dearly love her to be home with us, being cared for by us, but you know, from younger age she suffered all the chronic illnesses, her and Dad. And those illnesses have been passed down through our families. It's an intergenerational thing. I'm not a doctor, but my lived experience is having to watch the loss of family members, premature deaths in our family, and it's very hard to always, you know, be sort of saying, giving justifications why nuclear waste is such a why we shouldn't even be considering having nuclear waste in our communities. There's a lot of other people who were seen from, you know, who were never seen again after the bomb was detonated, and, you know, they called it Totem 1. Isn't that a disrespectful name to call it, you know? How disgusting. And this is what we've had to put up with as Aboriginal people. And, you know, we lost Dad young. I'd say young because he was only 69 when we lost him. He died from a heart attack. And, you know, things just, since we were exposed to the bombing in Newfield, we have never been a well family. As I say, we've had, you know, the premature deaths in our family. We've had mental health issues, and, you know, we're prone to renal failure. We have a lot of my mentors and were the Kupapiti Kungajuta, which Michelle was a big part of that as well when I was younger. We now, you know, want to tell the story for our elders. And one of the stories that I'm telling through our Yankandada line is our story for our family. And because I want Mum's story to be told, I want Dad's story to be told, I want our story to be told, I want Australia and England, you know, to see what they've done. This is just to one family there. We don't know, you know, my brother Yummy went blind. see his children's faces. You know, there is such pain within that. And, you know, Dutton can say all that he wants about, you know, nuclear waste being a good thing for the country. No, it's not. It's not safe. It never was, and it never will be. And, you know, it wasn't in 1953. What makes you think it's going to be safe now? And, you know, we've had our young people deserve to live in a nuclear-free world. And, you know, when I see, I've sort of seen a few photos of myself when I'm lying back in really good country, you know, I mean, it's just, and that's what country should look like. It shouldn't look like a wasteland. It's just, it makes me wonder why people need to keep taking from the land, you know. The land is our mother, you know. We belong to the land. It's just as simple as that. And every cut, every hole that you do make to our land is like, you know, it's a wound to us. It's something that you can't, and that causes us pain. You know, you can ask any Aboriginal person how they feel, and it doesn't matter where you go. I go to Sydney, you know, and I see the holes in the ground there, and that hurts, because you're thinking, why can't people see that this isn't needed? You know, like, sure, we understand about industry and all that type of thing, but somewhere along the line, you've got to draw the line. And, you know, with my lived history, with our lived experience as to being the, you know, first generation survivors of the bomb that was detonated in Emu Field, I would just say it wasn't worth it then, and it's not worth it now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Auntie June. So profound to hear from people about their lived experience of this big issue. Okay, so Stano's asked me to mention that we're live streaming this event. Live streaming, friends. So hello to the people who are watching online. And also T-shirts and stickers to promote the pushback. So at the end, feel free, T-shirts and stickers. Okay, so our next speaker is Vivianne McKenzie. She's a Kuyani and Adnyamatna elder and the recipient of a Human Rights Award, and spent many years fighting a nuclear waste dump at her community of Yapala alongside her sisters Heather and Regina. Vivianne has many family in Port Augusta and will share her thoughts with us all tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Want to thank you all for coming tonight and supporting us, because one of the things that the government of Australia does is they'd like to put anything to do with nuclear, what causes destruction where there's Aboriginal people are, where there's majority of Aboriginal people. And I'm not new to this because for the last few years we were fighting a nuclear waste facility proposal in the Flinders Ranges. And I can honestly tell you what the government did to my family. Kat knows that. It caused so much division in our family that it's still happening today. But I stand here as a proud Aboriginal woman today and as for receiving the Human Rights Award of my two sisters, because we stood firm against the government. And what we did was, one of the things we said to Matt Canavan was, you educated us and we shall be coming back with your policies to kill you, and we did. And Sister Michelle knows that. And I didn't tell you this, but my mum was a stolen generation. She was a Lurija Lower Southern Islander, and my dad was a Walpi Kuyani from the Flinders Ranges. So I understand what Junie's talking about the intergenerational things, because my parents were living in Woomera at the time when the nuclear bomb was set off over in Emu Fields. And you see up in the Flinders Ranges today, a lot of the people there, especially the older ones and young ones, are suffering from the skin disease and what that nuclear bomb did to them. And people died with cancer and everything. And also, when they talk about putting this facility in Port Augusta, I remember that you'd know when you were getting back to Port Augusta, even if you were in the car asleep or on the bus, you would always get this stench. And as you enter into Port Augusta, there's a lake, and it's known as Lake Knockout because of the smell. And when we came down there in 1959, we come from the beautiful place of Blinman in the highest peak of the Flinders Ranges, come to Port Augusta and to see what the coal from Lee Creek was doing to Port Augusta, and the health conditions that people suffered with when we came there, it wasn't funny. And they're looking to do this in Port Augusta now, and honestly and truly, and I say it and I don't care, I said to Kat tonight as we were coming in, I would love today to stand before Peter Dutton and Pauline Anson and have a discussion with them about this, because they're big talk, no action. When they talk about Aboriginal people and they say things, and at this very moment, the thing that they're using for this election is total racism against the First Nations people. Okay? And like Stano said, they used the voice. And then they've got, and it's sad to say, and I'll stand in here openly as an Aboriginal woman to say that today they are using the likes of Jacinta Price as a puppet on a string. Yeah. And so is Sharon Littley in South Australia, talking about saying we'll put the Aboriginal people back on cashless cards. Yeah, it's a shame. And you've got these people supporting, they've got Aboriginal people that are, my brother, the ones that in this room know my brother, he totally supports this. Okay? Talking about there's employment for Aboriginal people, there's employment. There's nothing in there. All that's in there is sickness and destruction. And all these things about nuclear, it doesn't discriminate against anyone. Okay? We're all in this together. We all stand as one, and like I said to Sister Michelle and the ladies here, I'm a very religious person. With God on our side, who can be against us? And that's the belief that me and my sisters took through the waste facility that was proposed in Willabadine and just next to our family property in the Flinders Ranges. And they stated it was remote, there was no one there. Hang on a minute, there's Aboriginal people just living next door, but they've got no respect. There's no respect. And one of the things, we should be also getting stuck into this Labor government here in South Australia about AUKUS. We should be doing that about the submarines, because if this goes ahead, they're going to be using Port Augusta for that. So I'd invite you, because I don't live in Port Augusta anymore, but all my family are there. My mum and dad's laid to rest there. And I'd love all you to come up there, the ones that haven't been there to Port Augusta. Like Stano said, it's the crossroads of Australia. Okay, you've got to cross the paths there. And like you said, and living in Port Augusta, when it's the off season, there's 27 different groups of people speaking a different language. And Australia was a non-English speaking country. Because I still speak my language. Rhanee still speaks the language. And it's there. The acknowledgement of Aboriginal people. We are the custodians of this land. And we were put in this country to be caretakers of this land. And that's what we're here today for. And I stand. And like I said, and my mum said to us, the land is your mother, the land was given, from the dust we came and the dust we shall return. And I thank you lot all for coming. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vivianne. Okay. Next, we've got a special guest arriving by Zoom, which may take a minute just to happen. You know how that goes. So if you would like to stand up and stretch, think about what we've heard from the speakers we've heard so far. Don't wander away, we won't be long, but if you want to stretch, now's a good time to do it. Okay, friends, it's time to take your seats again. Hello, time to take your seats again, please. Okay, our next speaker, Glen Wingfield, is a Gugada and Arabana man from Port Augusta who's joining us tonight through Zoom. Give him a wave. Thank you so much.
they were just brilliant and beautiful. The stories they told about, you know, the effects of nuclear power plants and stuff like that. And they've done a very, very in-depth presentation via on a slide, which demonstrated overseas countries that have power plants in their country, and the effects of that power plant. You know, 5 k's out, you know, in Guyana, little close proximity of that power plant. 5 k's out, 10 k's out, 15 k's out, 20 k's out, right up to 50 k's. These 50 k's away from the power plant, they still get, you know, some sort of radiation, some sort of sickness, or they still get, you know, interfered on radon rays or nuclear. So Port Augusta would be, Port Augusta, you know, right down to, I don't know how far away Port Augusta and Wiley are, flying from there. It's got to be close to, you know, 60 k's there, so that's impacting on those two terms there as well, Port Augusta. So it's in depth, and having a power plant there in Port Augusta is not on. We've got some pristine country up there, the Gulf there, which is some really good, beautiful seafood stuff, and that power plant will just do so much damage to that beautiful area, my hometown as well, and we're going to fight babies and keep this away from my hometown, and like the old girl said, John mentioned the old QP women's group. The campaigning and stuff they done and give, and the sisters that campaign and work they done, against these power plants, and, you know, the government keep trying to put them out there where we are. And we don't want it in Port Augusta. I don't think we want it in Australia, really. Because like we said, nuclear energy or radiation and that kind of stuff does not discriminate. It gets in everywhere. It attacks everyone, and it does some horrible things to you. So, in saying that, I think we stand together and fight, try and get change the outcome of this if it swings that way on Saturday, and get rid of it. Dutton and his followers can take his ideas elsewhere. Yep. We don't want to do it. I don't think we're in Australia also. But yeah, that's what I want to say. I would love to be there tonight to have a chat in person with everybody. But thanks for having me, guys. Hopefully get to see you guys soon somewhere in South Australia. Brilliant.
Thanks so much, Glenn. We appreciate you joining us. Okay, so next we've got Uncle Lindsay Thomas, who is a Nukunu elder. We're so lucky that he's able to be here tonight. Do you want to sit down or do you want to stand up? You're going to stand up? Beautiful.
Thank you. I'd just like to acknowledge and pay respects to the Ghana people whose ancestral lands we're meeting on today, and the previous speakers. Warms my heart, Sister June there, Sister Vivianne. Always speaking with passion when it comes to the land itself, and that's more or less what I want to speak of. My name's Lindsay Bramfield Thomas. I was born in Port Augusta 70 years ago, and my family is very connected to the sea. We've got a long line of fishermen, It goes back to my grandfather who used to fish with the salt bush, make nets out of the salt bush and fish with them. And to my dear uncle who used to take me down to, in his old wooden boat, I think I was about 10, and yeah, and he taught me, I got seasick first time I ever been in there, and he gave me a cup of seawater to drink, and then I wouldn't be sick again, but I got real sick. I think he told me bullshit. Anyway, it was like that. And he taught me the seasons of the fish. He showed me the tracking of the fish in the mangroves. And these things are so precious, you know. And when I get down there to this day, it's like, you go and grab some crabs or something like that, you just fossicking around and picking them up, and the smell and the adrenaline that goes through you, and then you can taste them after, which is important, you know. So, and that's where my family comes from, and that area up in Port Augusta is so pristine. I've had a lot of dealings with some people who call themselves scientists, marine scientists, and people like that. It's a breeding place for many species of fish. And if you just let any leak of that rubbish into our waters, a big example is the smelters, the Imperial. Look what that's done. That's crazy. It's just, you know. And you know, I'm good friends with some of the people there. They get fined $20,000 or something if they've caught fishing out of that, you know, out of those waters. It's just crazy, and you can't go grabbing any shellfish anymore. It's down past Waruna Island there, but many people in South Australia rely on that food, those fish that are caught in our waters and bred in that Port Augusta area. It's because of the way the tides move, the warmth of the water and the shallowness, etc. And I know something's happening. I've seen, if any of you seen the whale come up the Gulf the other day, our law, so, and we see this stuff in the ground is connected to our law. It was never allowed to be touched. It was, you know, our people learnt way back, went near that stuff, something happened, you know. They seen it through the animals that drank on there and things like that. But to me, I absolutely love Port Augusta and the actual connection I've had to the waters there for so long. And the work I did on the power station, that they were poisoning everything. And we got stuck into that in 1996 when the OH&S law, you know, became law, and we could stop the powerhouse and just, like you said, Lake Stinky there, you know. We didn't know what was letting off, and then they had to get the pH levels correct after that. But all I can say is that this thing, if they put that thing leaks anywhere, that will be environmental crime for sure, just for environmental crime. And I had senators from the Shadow Party come over and try to buy me big 5-course lunch and all, you know, they're flashing their credit card around. I just told them to piss off. Not interested, and I'm representing, you know, my dear uncle and my grandfather that taught me so much about those waters. Yeah. But thank you for listening, and yeah, get rid of this. I'd like to thank Clinton for his kind words. Clinton.
Thank you, Uncle Lindsay. I must say my family, my parents grew up in Port Augusta, and it is touching me to my core to hear people who love Port Augusta so much, because that's how I feel about it, that it's a beautiful place with lots of memories, even for me. So, thank you so much, Uncle Lindsay. And next, Rhanee Lester. Rhanee Lester is an Adnyamatna woman, storyteller and an advocate. Rhanee educates people about country, culture and kinship, and has just started a new role as cultural guide at Ikara, Discovery Park's Wilpena Pound. Please make her.
Good evening. Nanganina Wandu. Nanganina is hello, how are you, in my language, which is Admatna. I'm an Admatna Kuyani woman from my hometown, Port Augusta. But I've got a lot of close family and community ties to the Northern Flinders Ranges with the Admatna people, but also just growing up around Port Augusta and growing up in and around South Australia, lots of community ties throughout the Aboriginal communities across South Australia. I've been sitting and I've been listening and, hearing from the voices of our First Nations people, my elders. And I'm thinking, what can I offer in this space by way of education and perspective coming from the youngest member, I believe, that's speaking tonight, but also, knowing that I'm a representation of our next generation, which just happens to be the NAIDOC theme for this year, the next generation. I've heard Brother Stano talk about, him being new to the game. I'm also new to the game of advocating in this space, but I'm a long-time advocate in the area of youth, young people, mental health and kidney disease. I myself am a renal patient and have been for the last 20 years since I was 18, diagnosed with end-stage renal failure, going through 7 years of dialysis myself, and now living on my second transplant. So I know the benefit of nuclear medicine because I've used it. However, we're trying to change the narrative of needing that type of medicine. In the kidney space world now, they've got a new goal or a new aim, and it's to stop dialysis in 2050. This is the new slogan that's going around in Kidney Health Australia, is to stop dialysis. And I know that if we promote or if we entertain an idea of a nuclear power, then it means that the idea or that dream of stopping dialysis in 2050 it doesn't seem real to me, because we're saying that we need this nuclear, it's going to benefit us, but it's actually contradicting what we're trying to do, which is to, create a healthier country for a healthier life and healthier people. And I don't see how nuclear power is the pathway to that. We're trying to stop using this medicine. We're trying to stop getting sick, and we're trying to change our mob from living in the deficit to living in the benefit. The stuff that others are going into our Yatta, our Mother Earth for, we've known it's been there for many, many, many thousands and thousands of years, but we've never sought to touch it, to take it, to use it. And I think we did just fine for at least 65,000 years. And, in the last 230 years, look how much damage and destruction nuclear has done. Actually, there's an infograph that Stano wanted me to give a bit of a picture for in the worst case scenario, because we've got to think about the worst case scenario, because anything can happen in the unknown space. Like Nana Viv said, if you don't know, vote no. We don't know. We actually do not know. And in the past, or over in Japan, the impact was very severe and very harmful. And there's an image here that shows the impact of the what if. I don't even want to entertain a what if. I don't even want to think about what if. Because what if could look like that. What if we could find a better way without nuclear? And we do have it. not what if, we have a way. So why are we looking to go down a toxic path? We know what that toxic path looks like. We want to try a better way. So in my mind, and for the next generation too, I've just gone back to country. And that was really hard for me to do because it's expensive in this living crisis for Aboriginal people to return home to country. And I'm a young person that's now got, health. I'm able-bodied, and I still struggled to get home to country. And I longed for it, I yearned for it, and now I'm there, healthy. Mind, spirit, body, I'm connected to my country, I'm connected to my culture, I'm speaking my language, I'm sharing it with my peers, I'm sharing culture with my peers and with non-Aboriginal people. I think about the drive that I do from Ikara to Hawker to Corn, and then coming over that little rise over and seeing Port Augusta and the lights. I just spent the last, I don't know how many years looking at that power station. I don't want to spend another however many years looking at a nuclear power station. I want to look at the land pre-colonisation, and Port Augusta is actually making small steps to, returning our Mother Earth to its beautiful, natural way. I think about the old bridge even. Now there's memories of the old bridge. And the old bridge, people miss the old bridge. But as a young person, I get to see a pre-colonisation Australia. I get to see that with no bridge. If we put a nuclear powerhouse there, then that takes away from our next generation of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children having to grow up with looking at foreign objects instead of looking at our natural habitat and learning from that. Instead of seeing the Gulf and learning about the story and the dreaming and the creation story of the Gulf, we've had the power station there, now we've got the renewable, now we've got the wind farms. We've got foreign things there that cover up the beauty of what is still there. And we're looking at, with Dutton's proposal, to chuck another layer of BS over the top to cover up what still needs to be uncovered. So, no way, go away to nuke for me.
Thanks, Rhanee. Another powerful speech. Fantastic. Okay. We have two more speakers and then we will have questions. So our second last speaker is Dr. Kate Wiley. She's a GP and the Executive Director of Doctors for the Environment Australia, which is a non-profit advocacy organisation that recognises that human health depends upon a healthy environment. Clearly First Nations have known this since time before memory. Based in Adelaide, Dr. Wiley's work centres on the need for emissions reduction and the protection of biodiversity in order to protect human health. And she also focuses on the need for sustainability in healthcare. She's the immediate past chair of the RACGP's Climate and Environment Medicine Specific Interest Group, elevating the need for climate action with GPs across Australia, and she's a previous chair of Doctors for the Environment Australia.
Hello everybody, Namani. Namani I, that's right. Thanks Stano, and Auntie June and Auntie Vivianne and Glen and Uncle Lindsay and Rhanee for taking the time to come here to tell us about what nuclear means for you and your communities. It's a bit of a trip. I just want to really acknowledge how much it means for us to come and have the opportunity to hear from you. So as Mary said, Doctors for the Environment, we recognise that you need to have a healthy planet, to have healthy people. It doesn't seem like rocket science to us, but somehow I feel like that has been lost along the way. So I do acknowledge that we stand on Kaurna land. And the other thing I always like to acknowledge is the climate emergency. What we've done to our planet is pretty bad, right? When we talk about planetary health boundaries, we've breached the safe operating zone for 6 out of 9 of them due to our human-made actions, and mostly due to burning fossil fuels and deforestation. And we're getting to a point now where things are really starting to bite, last year was the hottest year on record. The year before that was the hottest year on record. What do you reckon this year's going to be? Exactly. And we're chopping down all the trees, we're destroying the land, the ice is melting. We are in time on for our planet's health. When it comes to nuclear, there's all sorts of health impacts of that I want to go into. DEA, we've got a nuclear position statement if anyone wants to look that up on our website, and we've got a fact sheet about it as well. And the first thing that we worry about with nuclear is it's just too slow, right? This plan would take 30 years to come online. There's 10 election cycles. Just think about that, right? Doesn't kind of add up to me. And all that time, we'd be continuing to burn fossil fuels. All that time, we'd be adding more gases to the atmosphere that is blanketing our planet, warming us up. And all that time, we are going to get hotter and hotter, and that means more global warming. Climate change is named by the World Health Organisation as the greatest public health threat facing humanity. The greatest, right? The most important one. And so all that time we'd be making that worse, and we'd be feeling the effects of that on the ground. We're feeling them now. When there's a heat wave, what happens in healthcare? We have more heart attack, we have more stroke. We have more acute renal failure. We have more suicidal ideation. We have more domestic violence. We don't want more of that. When there's an extreme weather event, what happens? Like with all the big floods, what happened? Loss of home, loss of country, loss of land, loss of stock, loss of food, loss of safe drinking water. What did we see with flooding? We saw bacterial infections, loss of ability to provide healthcare. All of this sort of stuff, this nuclear so-called policy is just making that worse and kicking the can further down the road for us to address the cause of the big health problem which we're in, which is our dependency on coal and oil and gas. And it's time to quit. It's time to move on. That's what we did with asbestos. That's what we did with smoking. Time to move on. But that's not the only reason why, nuclear is a problem. I'll just remind myself of my notes. As Stano said, it's the most expensive, right? And here we are in a cost of living crisis. Isn't this what the whole election's meant to be about? Cost of living crisis, so we choose the most expensive one. It doesn't make sense. People can't afford their insurance is a big thing that comes up, and there's this whole thing about if you build a nuclear reactor, you're not going to get insurance. No one's homes are going to be able to be insured. And what's the cheapest again? Wind and solar. It's the most water-intensive form of energy, except for pumped hydro. So here we are in this big dry continent, getting hot and dry because of climate change. Here we are in South Australia, the driest state in the driest continent. Why would we choose the most water-intensive? And I've got to say, like the Port Augusta plant, if that went ahead, they want to cool that by seawater, whereas all the other ones around the country would be cooled by, fresh water. It's just nuts, right? These guys are at the back are laughing. That water would be used to cool, the seawater would be used to cool the nuclear reactor. What does that do to the local water? So that local seawater is going to get hotter, and that alters the biodiversity. We're talking about, fish and, food supply and all of that. It's going to upset that. And, I just last weekend, and I was down in Middleton, where they've just had that great big algal bloom down there, and you go down the beach and there's dead cockle shells everywhere and the water's brown. And, you know, do we want to risk that? Do we want to put that into that environment? So that just seems, again, like a pretty bad idea. And then there's the obvious health impacts of radiation, which is the things that, you know, most people think of immediately. And, you know, like, when you get an X-ray, like everybody here's probably had an X-ray, and what does the radiographers do? Lead apron, right? You know, to protect them from the radiation. Why don't we use X-rays during pregnancy? Because we want to protect the baby from radiation. So it kind of doesn't make sense. And we know there's a lot of medical evidence around increased risk of solid tumours, so things like lung cancer, cardiovascular diseases in workers of nuclear plants. So, you know, the people who have to work there, they've got that risk. And then there's the fence line communities, so the people who live around, and the increased risk there of thyroid cancer and leukaemia, especially in our little ones. And, you know, as a doctor, telling a parent that their child has leukemia is like, yeah, it's a bad thing. And then there is the low but devastating effect of nuclear accident. And yeah, the risk is low, but if it happens, devastating. And I don't want to be the doctor on the ground that day, and no first responder wants to be on the ground that day, and no one wants to live there on that day, and nor for the bloody decades afterwards as you're dealing with that. You know, what happened in Chernobyl, 5,000 cases of thyroid cancer from Chernobyl from drinking contaminated cow's milk. So what it does to the animals. And then, you know, of course, there's the waste that, you know, lasts 100,000 years. And, you know, like, do we really trust the future that we can look after this stuff? You know, like, yeah. So DEA, this election, we've been asking people to vote for the candidates who'll put our health first, who'll put the health of community and the planet above the interests of big polluters. And so, you know, voting day is Saturday. Sorry, yeah, what is it? It's coming up. Oh, I'll miss it. Oh, shoot. And some of you may have voted already, but when you vote, think about health. Think about the health of our planet and the health of our community. Because if you vote for someone who wants to expand fossil fuels, if you vote for someone who thinks nuclear is a smart move for the health of your community, then basically you're doing yourself a big disservice. And I think that's my time now. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much, Dr. Kate Wiley. And our final speaker is Jim Green. Jim is the nuclear-free campaigner at Friends of the Earth. Welcome.
Thanks, Mary, and of course I would like to acknowledge the Kaurna traditional owners of this country, and also to thank the mob who have come down from Port Augusta. It's awesome to have you here, and you've all spoken so strong. It's fantastic. I would also like to acknowledge two of the candidates in this electorate of Sturt who are running on Saturday. Katie McCusker from the Greens and Dr. Verity Cooper, who's running as an independent candidate. I won't describe you as a teal independent despite the colour of your shirt, Verity. But it's very welcome to have you here, and thank you so much for your active work to oppose Peter Dutton's plan for nuclear reactors. I'll just go through some points quickly. I'll try to avoid repeating what Kate's just mentioned, but as you may know, the Dutton Coalition plans reactors at 7 sites around Australia. In South Australia, they're planning these small modular reactors, which is really bizarre because they literally don't exist. There's a small reactor in China, another small one in Russia, but there's nothing modular about them. Even so, they were both 9 to 12-year projects. They were many times over budget. They're not being replicated, so you know that's the plan for South Australia. But of course, you know, there is a risk that Dutton could revise that plan and try to impose large conventional reactors on South Australia. One of the really interesting things about it is that it would all be taxpayer funded, as in your taxes, my taxes. and that is because there is literally no chance whatsoever of this being pursued as a commercial project. It simply wouldn't fly. I think some international context is really important. Just a few points. There's so much to talk about, but nuclear power accounts for less than 10% of global electricity generation. It's fallen from half its peak of global electricity generation. If you look at the number of reactors, it's been stagnant for 20 years. Last year was telling, and it was typical, 4 gigawatts of new nuclear power compared to 666 gigawatts of new nuclear. And China is the only country with a significant nuclear expansion.
Not new nuclear, surely you mean new solar and wind?
Yeah, sorry, new renewables. In China, which is the only country with a significant nuclear expansion program, the figures last year were 3 gigawatts of new nuclear compared to 300 gigawatts of new renewables. So, you know, that's the situation with nuclear around the world. It's stagnant and it's getting absolutely whipped by renewables. Renewables have grown steadily. It's now 30%, but we're on the cusp of significant growth. Sorry, 30% of global electricity generation. The conservative International Energy Agency expects that to reach nearly 50% by the end of this decade. So we're on a real upswing, not only in Australia but globally with renewables. And conversely, as I mentioned, nuclear has fallen below 10% and it is certain to continue to fall. As Kate mentioned, the cost of nuclear is excessive, even using very generous low nuclear cost estimates. CSIRO, the CSIRO, finds that nuclear is significantly more expensive than a renewable scenario, which involves 90% solar PV and wind, plus storage, plus transmission. Nuclear is too slow, an absolute bare minimum 10 years for planning, another 10 years for construction, another 5-6 years to repay the energy debt and the carbon debt. So even in this best case scenario, nuclear could not make the slightest contribution to reducing greenhouse emissions in Australia until the middle of the century. And the coalition claims to be serious about net zero by 2050, but their policies suggest otherwise. And it'll be interesting to see if the coalition maintains that superficial support for net zero by 2050 in the coming years, because there's open division within the coalition parties. And as CSIRO states, CSIRO, Australia's leading science agency, nuclear power, quote, won't be able to make a meaningful contribution to achieving net zero emissions by 2050, end quote. And former Australian Chief Scientist Alan Finkel, who has a history of being pro-nuclear, but he's rethinking his position, he says, any call to go directly from coal to nuclear is effectively a call to delay decarbonisation of our electricity system by 20 years, end quote. But for the coalition, that's a feature, not a bug. They want to delay decarbonisation. They absolutely love fossil fuels. The coalition wants to derail the energy transition to prolong the life of expensive polluting coal plants and to build even more, to massively increase the use of gas, despite all its problems and its extreme cost, and to impose a moratorium on the deployment of large-scale renewables. So the coalition will kill this energy transition, with or without nuclear power. The coalition will kill the energy transition, and it would be extremely difficult to revive it later on because investors will be spooked, supply chains will be broken, and all momentum will be lost. So I think that's something that should really focus our minds. With or without nuclear power, it's entirely possible that nuclear power could be killed off by the Senate before it even gets going. But even if that was to happen, we still get this complete derailing of the energy transition with hideous consequences for greenhouse emissions, for public health, for power bills and taxes and all the rest of it. It's a major national disaster with or without nuclear power. I won't talk about the risks of nuclear except to note that there are different categories of risks. Obviously there's the risk of catastrophic accidents, and just a few days ago we were commemorating the Chernobyl anniversary. There's the risk of weapons proliferation, which is so important. It's happened around the world, countries pursuing nuclear weapons under cover of a nuclear power program. It's happened in Australia. Some of you will know the Jervis Bay nuclear power project under a previous Liberal government of John Gorton, who later acknowledged that there was a hidden weapons agenda behind the only serious plan for nuclear power ever in Australia. Thankfully that got knocked on the head by Billy McMahon and then by Gough Whitlam. So catastrophic accidents, weapons proliferation, and last but not least the security risks, which are so vividly illustrated in Ukraine at the moment and over the past 2-3 years, where we've had the military seizure of an operating nuclear power plant, which sounds like a Netflix series, but it actually happened. That particular power plant, called Zaporizhia, has lost off-site power at least 8 times since the war began. Every time they lose off-site power, they're reliant on generators, and if the generators fail, as they did at Fukushima, if the generators fail, then you get a nuclear meltdown and you get a massively increased risk of a nuclear disaster. And, well, it's too horrific even for a Netflix series, but how do you handle a nuclear disaster in a war zone? What are the emergency response capabilities going to be like? What's the evacuation going to be like? It's too horrible to think about, but anyway. And we've done some work on this, the Nuclear Plume project. It's nuclearplume.au if you want to look it up on the website. And it's got maps there about if the Fukushima disaster happened in Australia. It's not terribly sophisticated. We haven't had the resources to look at different... thanks for that, Robin. We haven't been able to look at different topology and all those sorts of variables or different types of reactors, but you know, Japan is obviously an advanced country with vast experience with nuclear technology, and yet they screwed up massively there, and it could easily happen here. And if you look at the Port Augusta section of the nuclearplume.au website, you'll see some of the impacts that could arise there. It would be the evacuation of Port Augusta and other small towns. We calculate that there are over 14,000 people within a 30k evacuation zone. We've also got lists of all the schools and other vital facilities that would have to be evacuated. So I'd encourage you to have a look at that, and I will leave it there. So thank you very much for coming.
Thanks so much, Dr. Jim Green. What a panel. What amazing information and what beautiful storytelling. So I know you'd all like to thank the speakers before we go into questions and answers, and I would too. So thank you to all of the speakers for your work and for your advocacy. Thank you for your passion. Thank you for your commitment. Some of you have been working on this for decades, if not your entire adult lives. Thank you for your love for country, your love for humanity, and your love for life. So thank you to all of the speakers. Pardon?
And our love for Port Augusta.
Of course, and love for Port Augusta. Yeah, I love for Port Augusta. Now, just reminding you that there are T-shirts and stickers to support the pushback. Are people talking to you about that at the end, Stano? Just grab them. Yeah. Woohoo! And there are also anti-AUKUS T-shirts and such up the back that you can speak to Anne about. Pardon?
How much I'm asking to do?
Ooh, let me think about it. No, it'd be kind of, just grab one shirt and you can have it on the house.
Okay, one shirt on the house. Don't be greedy. Just take one. Okay, lovelies. Do people have questions? Okay, so we've got one question over here.
Oh, this one? This one? Sorry, I missed that. No, you can start.
Please
my name is Marisol, and I went in my early 20s with the Friends of the Earth to Roxby Downs, and I've been probably not as dedicated as many of these people here, and I just want to thank all the people who have really spent their lives fighting for our land and protecting our country. I tried to get other parents here tonight to come and listen and, you know, engage with this because they have children and then one day they'll have grandchildren. And I just feel a little disillusioned. Like, how do you get people to care over time when we still keep having the same arguments over and over? I'm sorry.
Does any of our speakers want to respond?
I'll have a go, and I think other people would want to have a go too. But I think, how do we get people to care? By caring ourselves. You know, like you obviously really care. And everybody who's turned up here tonight cares, because that's why we turn up. And I suppose, you know, the world is run by those who turn up. So let's turn up. And, you know, you have ripples in what you do. So, you know, you can go and talk to some, you know, what did you do yesterday? Well, I went to this nuclear talk and these people from Port Augusta came down and told us their stories and, you know, I think that's it. And I suppose, you know, like anyone in the climate movement kind of feels like every day we push the boulder up the mountain and every night it rolls back down. But we just have to keep trying, because what we're fighting for is the future livability of our planet. The stakes are so high, so let's just keep going and know that we're not alone, that everybody thinks, we all think this, everybody in this room does. And so, you know, we're part of a movement together. Sometimes we get tired, but we keep walking. Yeah.
Can you stand up when you speak? Stand up. Oh, to make me stand up, Kat. Yeah, one of the things we as Aboriginal people, we talk about our tangibles and our intangibles. And I do a lot of arguing with mining companies. And they still haven't got the understanding when we as Aboriginal people talk about the tangibles and intangibles, is what we can see and what we can't see. And we've got the storylines of the minerals that are under the ground. And we've been asking them, can we record these storylines? Because this is for our generations to come. And like you, feeling really sad, for the children of who are not Aboriginal to understand what this story, and that is our beliefs. We're the custodians of this land. We were put here, and we got the likes of Peter Dutton and Pauline Anson going on today about the welcome to country. Well, the ignorance of these people don't understand that I stand here today, Rhanee, Stano, Junie and them there sitting, we're visitors to Adelaide. I live in Adelaide, but we're visitors. We can't speak on this country here because that's our respect. And that is what welcome to country is. We're not welcoming everybody to the country. We're welcoming to where we come from. And that's the ignorance. And one of the things we should be doing is teaching. I went to school, I went to uni, should be teaching about pre-colonisation, because before colonisation, Australia was a nation with nations of people in it, just like Europe. Because today, we still speak our language. English is a second language to me, to Rhanee, to Stano, to Junie and Jennifer. So when they say, come to Australia and learn the Australian way of culture, I always say to people, it's not standing on the beach with a pair of shorts on with a stubby in your hand. It is about who are the people of this country. It is the First Nations people. Like me, I'm a Lurija, Salawa, Southern Islander, Kuyani, Walpi woman. That's my parents. And everybody knows where Uluru is. Docker River is, that's where my mother comes from. My father comes from the Flinders Ranges. He's a Walpi Kuyani. So that's it.
I see you up the back, but the next person is over here. I'm just going to take you in order.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Verity Cooper. As Dr. Green said, I'm standing as the independent for Sturt. I'd just like to make two comments. One is about the possibility of nuclear accidents. I'm not sure how many of you knew that there was an earthquake 10 miles underneath the Hunter Valley just recently, and it was estimated between 4.6 and 5.1 on the Richter scale. That is huge. That is exactly where they're planning on putting a nuclear reactor. And did anyone see any follow-up discussion or alarm in the Murdoch press about this? No. And that's another thing about the Murdoch press and suppression of genuine information. The second thing is I'd really like to thank you all so much for coming down and sharing your wisdom with us. I'm really touched because I know this is a hard thing to do, so thank you so much. Kate, you're right, we have to turn up. We just have to keep turning up every day. My volunteers, and I'm sure Katie will say this as well, the worst place to be out doing pre-polling is at Myrtle Bank, because the number of entitled, rude people coming out and voting Liberal it's absolutely disgusting. And my volunteers come back really depressed at what they've seen. So we must fight this. Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Stephanie. I'm just a resident of Adelaide, and I'd like to very much thank, and I love Port Augusta. I'm very fond of the people there, and I know quite a few there. And I thank you so much. I learn every day from Indigenous people. It's just a fascinating culture, a series of cultures, and I totally support Welcome to Country. But my simple comment really is, would I want a nuclear reactor next to my house? So why should I, if I don't want one next to mine, why should you have one next to yours? Thanks for that. That was great.
Okay, we've got another question here.
This here and here.
Hello. I'd just like to say one slightly upbeat thing. I reckon that on Saturday we might very well put nuclear to bed for good in Australia. That will still leave the stupidity of AUKUS, and that. But I reckon that nuclear is dead as from Saturday.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
My name's Tony McIntyre. I'm from Wiley, so just down the road from Port Augusta. And I also worked for the enemy for a long time. I've worked for Western Mining and BHP. But one of the things that most people may, I don't know if anyone knows this, but back in the 1960s, BHP and the state government here were looking into building a nuclear power station at Port Augusta. Yes. Yeah, and that the good old, when they found gas at Moomba, they said, right, that's cheaper. So that, the idea there, we've already got cheaper power at Port Augusta, so the nuclear power makes no bloody sense. It didn't make any sense in the 60s, so it doesn't make any sense today. The other thing I'd like to point out, did you know that Lee Creek coal has uranium in it? So, you know, Port Augusta people have been having uranium dumped on them for a very, very long time. Yeah.
This is
and
it's not a newsflash to our
yeah.
That was a significant storyline to the Puyo people.
Yeah.
That's the Yulu's dreaming.
Mm.
And they were told not to do that. And also, my grandfather, Rhanee's great-great-grandfather, told them from Mount Painter not to use that uranium because it would kill and it would harm. And the thing is, they used that uranium to bomb Hiroshima.
Mm. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. So that's just a bit of interest.
My name's Robin from Friends of the Earth Adelaide, co-host of tonight, and also I'm a committee member of Port Adelaide Community Opposing AUKUS. And tomorrow we're all going to dress up in our fabulous Port Adelaide Pacoa t-shirts, only $30. We'll be selling them at the May Day rally tomorrow at 12 o'clock in Light Square if you're free, and giving out flyers to educate all the unionists, who are all Labor voters, about the dangers of AUKUS. So wish us luck.
Now, I don't know if you've noticed our model here.
Come on, Jordo.
If you weren't sure about the glory of the t-shirt, there's the glory of the t-shirt bottom for you. And have we got a last couple of questions?
Hi everyone. Stand up. Okay. Hi. My name's Lisa Lumsden. I know a few people in this room. I was involved in the Repower Port Augusta campaign for 6 years, But what I wanted to say from that is, in response to the question about how to get people involved in this, and I just want to say that it actually doesn't take many, because most people do sit down. And so actually it doesn't take very many to create a very big movement. So depending on what happens on the weekend, it doesn't take it takes a lot of energy from a few, but you can make a huge difference by standing up. So don't lose faith and lose hope, but we just have to keep feeding each other the energy and keep letting people rest and come back when they've got time. But this is the long road, and First Nations people know how long that road is, but it doesn't actually take as many people as you think.
Dan. Rhanee, did you want to respond to that?
Is that a response? Response, and then to Dan, and then Stano? Stan, or Dan, and Sam.
Hi. In response to that, I just want to share a little experience of me trying to get here to this event. I thought it was going to be, yep, I can just go along, help Brother Stano out and help the mob, and also stand in for place, usually my sister, Candace Champion. Some of you might know her, but usually she's standing here. And if she can't make it, if our family can't make it, then who's next in line? Who can fill the gap and stand in? And I thought I was going to have trouble letting my work know that I had to come away for this event. But I actually had trouble with my partner letting me come to this event because nuclear was a trigger word. And he's someone from the community that's been affected by nuclear since the Maralinga bombings and ongoing governments in coming into their countries and dangling carrots and causing division amongst our people about what's right for our country. And the higher the money, the bigger the carrot, the more likely our mob is going to say yes to a short-term band-aid. It's not even a band-aid, it's a short-term experiment that could have lasting effects for our communities, and they do have lasting effects for our communities. So my partner did not want me to come and be a part of this because of this ongoing, we're intergenerational. I was a little kid watching my aunties chain themselves to fences to stop mining trucks from going in and accessing our country without our permission, and still just doing it anyways. You know, that's like me knocking on your door, not even knocking on your door, just rocking up and saying, I'm going to come in and take what I want, and you're saying, no, sorry, you can't, it's my house. Oh, too bad. I'll have that. Thank you very much. You know, and we are we've been powerless. So in that sense, our mob didn't have a choice back then, but we have a choice now. We've learnt this new culture, this foreign culture. We've learnt it so that we can fight against it. Not so that we can join it and be a part of it. It's so that we can educate. We're talking the same language now, so it's not hard to understand what we want anymore. And we're saying no. And we'll continue to say no.
Hi everyone, my name's Stan Monceau. I'm not a politician, my mother is. She's the Mayor of Burnside. I run a discussion group online called Nuclear Fuel Cycle Watch Australia. I'm a bit of a hands-off moderator, but in that group we have both pro and anti-nuclear voices. It's an unusual space where people do often get hot under the collar, but we do discuss the details. Jim, you touched upon the Gorton administration's clandestine push to support a nuclear weapons agenda with the development of a plant at Jarvis Bay. It strikes me that if the Liberal Party are leading this, and it doesn't make commercial sense, which is abundantly clear, there's another ideological strand here, which is militarism. I think we need to understand that collectively better and talk more about that. And I think that in terms of galvanising support for this, we need to recouple the artificially de-hitched wagons of the military arm of nuclear industry and the civilian, put them back together again and remind people that they're one and that it's one complete chain. Spent nuclear fuel contains plutonium. It can be reprocessed out and repurposed for the refurbishment of nuclear warheads. China's nuclear estate's going gangbusters. They're growing. The Western one is stagnant or in decline. So the West wants to nuclear colonise Australia. This is my view. And we are a willing outpost while we are naive. But if we're not naive, we can resist. Jim, do you think I'm hyperbolic on this, or what's your...
Well, I think that I don't really have a lot to say.
Comment and then we'll go to Stano.
Yeah, I think they're hugely important issues, Dan, and I'm glad that you raised them. I don't think they understand that the coalition even understands these connections because they're really dumb. But, you know, if there is a serious push for nuclear power in Australia beyond this one, it most likely will be driven by a hidden weapons agenda, as the John Gorton Jervis Bay one was. And, you know, we're seeing this stuff happening all around the world, in large part because of Trump in America. You know, these sorts of debates are happening in Western Europe and Northeast Asia, and they are happening in Australia, not publicly. And I don't think that the coalition is bright enough to understand the connections. But of course, one of the interesting things is, even if they did understand those connections, and even if that was their underlying motive, or one of them, they can't really say so publicly. But it's a hugely important. That one is going to be absolutely alive for the next 5, 10, 20 years, regardless of what happens this Saturday. And of course, it ties into AUKUS as well. If it's Australia is going to have highly enriched uranium-fuelled submarines, that stuff is directly weapons usable. If it's okay for Australia's military to have weapons usable material for subs, then presumably it's okay for the other 190 countries in the world to have direct military access to explosive material for nuclear weapons.
Thanks, Jimbo. I think Stano had his hand up for a while. Yeah, did you comment? Yeah, and then, are you happy?
Okay, I just need to let you know, my darlings, that at some point we're all going to go home to bed. Now,
Two more questions.
Stano's going to speak next. There are already more than 2 people on the queue. I'm going to take the next 2 questions after Stano's spoken. The next 2 questions that in my mind were next on the queue, which means some of you are not going to get to ask a question. On the other hand, maybe you can walk right up to the person you'd like to ask and have a chat with them while one of you gets a T-shirt. Are you with me? Okay, Stano.
Thank you, Mary. Now that you've said that, my next speech is about half an hour long. Kidding. Kidding. So, sorry, I just want to touch on that point. Sorry, I didn't quite catch your name. Marisol. Lovely to meet you, Marisol. But your question was around engagement. Yeah, certainly. For myself in particular, just very, very quickly, My right angle, yes, okay, thank you. Kidding. So myself, personally, it's been quite difficult. I come from a very large family in Port Augusta, and it's been a bit of a challenge to be able to communicate what I do in this capacity, to be able to make change for our community, in particular with the lead up to Saturday. Equivalent to 121 members in my family, that's just from my grandparents down, and so I'm very, very lucky, but in a sense too very disappointed because some of my family members don't take what I'm out here advocating for very seriously. This impacts on every generation of my family. And so it was quite interesting going back last week or so. It was in the evening and I call him my little brother, but he's my little nephew. And he's 10 years of age and he walks in and I'm watching the debate on repeat because it's very interesting. And Peter Dutton was speaking and he walks in and he looks at the screen and he says, "We do not want," in a very stern voice, "we do not want nuclear power." And I said, "Why is that?" And he goes, "Because it costs too much." And who's going to pay for it? A 10-year-old kid. And I'm like, and in his final statement, he turns around and he points at the screen and with that look on his face, he says, "Never trust a bald guy." And I thought, I've now planted the seed. So this is where it all starts. We've all got a job and a responsibility to go out there and plant the seed, and we just expect and hope that people will water it and they'll eventually get the message. So persistence, patience and perseverance will get us over the line. No, I haven't finished. I just wanted to touch on Auntie Vivian's point very quickly in regards to Welcome to Country. And so it's been quite interesting because I'm on social media quite often and I'm quite a lot. But I see a lot of challenges, I see a lot of debates and I see a lot of concern from people like me that struggle to respond to those questions around Welcome to Country and the stance that they're trying to make, and yes, that it should be, only done in Parliament. And I'm sorry I didn't bring my Aboriginal flag tonight. I'm not following suit, but I would normally have an Aboriginal flag with me. But the question around that is, how do you greet people when they knock on your front door? So as a takeaway message, if there's anything you can share with the wider public and the wider network of friends, is how do you treat people when you first greet them, whether it's in a social setting or whether it's at your front door, at your kitchen table. Just keep that in mind about Welcome to Country. And no, Ernie Dingo did not introduce the Welcome to Country, just saying. And for the first person to put their hands up, can you please tell me the price of a carton of eggs? Thank you. Anybody? Any takers? Thank you.
Hello. Okay, so I'm now going to walk this down to, I'm sorry, but you're not one of the two. You're the next person. Mary, I just want to thank them. Do you still want to ask about it? Do you still want to speak?
Yeah, I will. Okay, hello, is that on? No? Where do you put on? Do you have to hold it? Is that on now or not? Okay, all right. I'm Anne, and as Mary said earlier, I've got anti-AUKUS stuff here. I live down at the port, and just the AUKUS stuff we have to take really seriously. I can't share Bruce's kind of enthusiasm that nuclear might be dead after Saturday. It won't be, because the nuclear industry is going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing for the military reasons that Dan mentioned, but also because they have to get rid of their waste. And they can't get rid of it any other way. AUKUS commits us to handling the waste from our submarines, then they're going to say, oh, look, if you're doing that, you can take the rest of it. And I think the other point to realise is that there's going to be nuclear reactors at Osborne 500 metres from residential accommodation. And of course, no one's going to get sick straight away. So they're going to say, look, oh, it's perfectly all right. Look, we've had one there for 5 years and no one's got sick. It's terrific. And so that will go, that will then be used. So I just think we have to be really, really careful and fight AUKUS with all the power that we can. Thanks, Mary.
I'd just like to say something on the nuclear waste. They're asking us Aboriginal people to put this stuff in the earth. Well, that's our mother, and it kills that forever. We're not allowed to do it. We're not. And we won't. We'll all fight together on that one. Yeah.
Just very quickly, my father-in-law was a Kurrajeri man from Broome. He changed his age at the end of the war from 15 to 18. They sent him over to Japan because he had Japanese heritage as well to clean up after Hiroshima. They sent him back on a boat with a lead-lined coffin. He survived. He went on to have 9 children. I have one of his grandsons. He died riddled with cancer. This is a battle for all of us, and it's for our future generations. My child was born with a disability. I'll never know whether that has anything to do with the bomb or not. I love him. He's the most beautiful young man. But this is for our children and our children's children.
I'd just like to say I've been to a great number of meetings over the years, and this would have to be up there with it. It's been just wonderful. Thank you.
We've come to the end of the night where things get less formal and I get to sit down. I think it's time to thank people. Those were such amazing questions, responses, contributions. So what do you think? One final round of applause? So let's keep fighting this together and let's win this together. Thank you.